at the Edelman Trust Barometer for 2016 and 2017, I'm sure some of you have looked at it, you are going to see a general decline just within 1 year from 2016 to 2017. A lot of countries went down. There was a trust deficit increase. The thing is that is not surprising to me. I'm sure to most of you. We have had trust in governments declining probably from the high of the 90s when things seemed to be changing in the positive side. Dictators leaving office, one party stays crumbling. It was a decade of hope. Since then, I think there has been a visible decline. What is, however, noticeable and concerning is that it's not just the decline of trust for governments, it's decline of trust for businesses, decline of trust for civil society, and decline of trust for the media. So that worries us if the watchers can't be trusted. I think that is a new item for me that is really worrying. As trust is decreasing with all these four institutions, one of the issues that we see are two broad tendencies. One is the growth of populism, particularly in the Western side or in the Western countries, where it's used to be the bastions of human rights. But we are seeing them swing to the right. There is fear among the populations, fear of perceived social values, erosion of social values, fear of loss of sovereignty to globalization. All of a sudden, the work of the United Nations, which we put together as humanity after 1945, to try and make sure that the horrors of war will never occur again. All of a sudden, we are losing faith in that. Identity issues are breeding violent extremist tendencies. Corruption. Out of of all the governments that have been changed over the last 20 years, the majority of them have been changed because the public was not happy with their their cleanliness when it comes to corruption. We are seeing polarization across the political and religious divide. This is where we are seeing the lack of trust emerging from. We are also losing our former barometer, the editorial houses that made sure that information that comes to the public is fair, is accurate. Social media today is replacing parenthood. Our kids are able to learn new things from other people besides their teachers in the classroom and their own parents. Now, what do the citizens themselves want from governments? If you look at my world survey, which was carried out as we were moving towards the adoption of the 2030 agenda, one of the top 5 concerns of the citizenry is that they want a transparent, accountable, and effective government. Now, if we go back to the barometer I mentioned, the Edelman barometer measures 28 countries every year. And the decline I mentioned was really that 19 out of 28 countries actually showed a governance deficit increase. That is rather a very significant percentage. Now, if what people want is a transparent, accountable, and effective government, and we see it in the couching of the SDGs, where we were very explicit about an inclusive, peaceful society, where we were very explicit that we wanted our development paradigm to leave nobody behind and to make sure that we reach the furthest first. Now, that is tackling discrimination. Good as it is, we are no more very explicit about our human rights values, and this becomes our entry point. If we are going to leave nobody behind, what is it that we have to do? What are the open governance principles that are essential? One is that we are beginning to see governments genuinely trying to make sure that information is accessible to the public. It's in the public domain. Almost all the governments are doing that at the moment. The second issue is that information availability on its own is not enough. What we are seeing is information that must make institutions responsive, information that must make the public engage, and information that should also make the different parts of the government and also of the state responsible. Lastly, civil society has been engaging in a number of activities, and a lot of the activities of civil society, like right to information, accountability measures like Check My School and all that grouping, all aim at making sure that civil society is also equally engaged. These are the open government principles. These are human rights principles. These are now principles of SDGs. And this is what we would like to see and to make sure that at least we move forward in a transparent and accountable way. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, everybody. Distinguished leader and participant. I believe that all of you are very visionary leaders, because here all of you are leaders, and as a leader you must be transparent, accountable, and full of integrity. What for? To build up public trust. As a commissioner, in the following 2 years, we will have a very, very important elections. Next year, we will have a local election in 171 province and kabupaten kota, or cities. And also, in 2019, we will have a national election for legislative and presidential elections. Election is a very close to the public trust. If public do not trust to the commissioner and also to the process of the elections, so usually, finally, when we announce the final result of the elections, there will be a lot of frauds, conflicts, if we are not trusted by public. So that's why, since the beginning of the process of the election, we try to be transparent. Since we announce of all budget that we use for the elections. And when we want to set up regulations, we invite many stakeholders to be involved in our process to make the regulations. And public trust is one of the keys to conduct democratic, free and fair election. Electoral integrity, of course, basic on the international standard. We put must be obeyed by our staff, not only at the national level, but also at the province and cities or district. But KPU also have problems when we want to implement it, the transparency and accountability principles. Many electoral irregularities and fraud occurred during the elections. And also, at that time, before the year of 2009 elections, there's a very low public trust and participation. Electoral data was not consolidated and documented properly. No public access to electoral data. So that's why, since we have 2014 elections, we try to build more and a lot of open data. Several strategies to implement the transparency on election process. First, conduct public consultation for each draft of KPU regulations. Publishes the draft of KPU regulation widely through KPU's web. I see that the operators many times open our websites. Share electoral data to Bawaslu. Bawaslu in election supervisory body. Political parties and other stakeholders. Conduct regular meeting with journalists. Optimize ICT on elections. And this is our system. Next, our slide. Just put this slide. Okay. Next slide. This is part of our information technology uses on our elections. First is SIDALI for developing, updating, and publishing voters' data. You know, we have more than 190 million registered voters. And the second, we have Silon for collecting, verifying, and publishing candidates. So everybody now not only see the picture and names of the candidates, but also can get the curriculum vitae, the full curriculum vitae of each candidate. CPOL for verifying and publishing political parties. Now everybody can see how many members belongs to some political parties. JDIH, publishing all document and information related to law and regulations. So any regulation, let me say in Indonesia, peraturan, keputusan, petunjuk teknis, all stated in our JDIH. SILOG for monitoring, distribution, and electoral logistic. So we have many logistic for the election. Most and the important things that many people often ask is ballot paper. Some of them say that, oh, KPU produce more ballot paper than we need. In that SILOG, we publish how many ballot papers are produced. So it will be more transparent and public will trust to our logistics. Situng, this is the most important one for our last elections. Publishing C1 form and vote recapitulation at all level. Public do not only get the final result, but they can get the result since from the polling station level to the sub-district, to the district, up to the national level. And finally, click, click. Okay, next. Okay, let me say click with next. This is the different one. Challenges and efforts. Some challenges to implement transparency, resistance from political parties and or candidates. No, excuse me, before. Okay, politicking issues, human resources, internet connectivity, legal foundation. We have problem of internet connectivity. Some efforts done by KPU, stakeholder involvement since the beginning, provided training for operators, procure internet connection via satellite to regions that are not covered by internet connection, and finally, provided stronger legal foundation at KPU regulation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, thank you for this honorable to speak in front of you all. Once again, Bojonegoro is one of agency in East Java province of Indonesia. In 2008, Bojonegoro is the poorest agency in East Java province. So I can tell you that my ex-mayor is going to jail. My ex-head of parliament is going to jail for a long time, until now. So at the time we have the bad condition of the roads, we have a bad infrastructure, and the government have debt, almost 300 billions, 300 juta itu apa ya? 300 million. Billion rupiah. So you can imagine that our regency at the time is in a bad condition. The public trust the government is very low. The corruption happens in everywhere. 6 head of agencies is going to jail. And at the time we have a new mayor. Election in 2008, we start the conversation with the new mayor. What we do at the first time, is that to connect with the people directly. So we asked the new mayor to give the cellular number, to give all head agency cellular number to the public, so public can reach the mayor and the head of the agency anytime. And the second is about because the public trust in the government is very low. At the time, we start to have public dialogues every Jumat prayer, so everybody can go to the hall of the town and talk with the mayor and that agency about what's the problem that facing day to day. The problem at the time is about the corruption. So most of the public complain about the public service delivery, and that's mean that there is a strong demand from the public to the local government to building a system that guarantee the corruption will not happen again in Bojonegoro. The second is about, you know that 80% government spending is on procurement system. And then I think almost 70% corruption happen on that side. So after we have a good direct relation with the public, with the community, we try to make a system in Bojonegoro with an open contracting system, because we believe that the corruption start from the procurement processes or the implementation project of the government spending. In Bojonegoro at the 2016, 1 years ago, we start to design the platform. That the platform allow you to see the contract of the third party of the rekanan, or how to say in Indonesian, vendors of the government who doing the project of the government. So if the public see the contract, So public can track, can monitor the implementation of the project. I mean the price, the progress, and the timeline, and etc. etc. This is the first platform. The second platform now we design. Maybe operator can show that the website. We want to try to connecting all the base of development process in Bojonegoro into one platform. I mean that we have a planning development online, we have a budgeting online, we have a procurement online, we have open contracting online, and then implementation project, payment online, and audit into one platform. So basically, a community or public can easily track the project, start from the very early stage, the development planning, until the payment or audit. Let's say that we have one project of infrastructure, let's say the irrigation, 100 billion rupiah for the irrigation. We can easily track where is the project came from, who proposed the project, if the parliament have a meeting for the budget, who changed the budget, if any changes, and then who doing that project, what's the host vendor, why this vendor is win, why this vendor is lose, and then public can easily monitor the process of the project, and then public can give feedback and a comment on every single phase of the development processes. So it is give opportunity to civil society to after track and the monitor give feedback to help the local government to increase the service delivery of the infrastructure process, of the procurement, and etc. etc. So we believe after this design of this platform is going live in 2017 for the first platform, and then 2018 for the second platform, we believe that we will easily detect the fraud and the corruption that happened in Bojonegoro. Next slide, please. This slide I took from the Open Contracting Partnership. You know that in a common local government, we have a 1 star because the data tender on a PDF format, but Bojonegoro want to go to 5 stars. We want to adding the other data like a GPS base, and then the data in the contract will be connected to the another phase of the development processes, like I said before, the planning development, the budgeting, and etc. etc. Next slide, please. Yes, as you can see that this is the address of the website, and then we have a problem right now in Bojonegoro because this platform was already conducted with the mayor degree. It will be challenge for the new mayor to conduct this open contracting or just stop this open contracting. So actually we need let's say the high level of the law, the province law or the central government law, and then we have the result of this open contracting. You know that the survey that conducted by the Republic Institute, the trust of public in Bojonegoro or public satisfied in the government is increased into 94.1% in 2017, the end of the early December. So this is the result that when we confirm with the early 2008, when the public satisfies is about 5%. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I come from a country where still budget work is not being considered as a legitimate area of intervention by the civil society. We are getting a bigger and bigger core of public officials who thinks that budget is still a secret document. Budget expenditures are secret documents, and budget is too technical, too scientific a knowledge to be shared with the civil society and with the citizens. Civil society, on the other hand, thinks that budget is too serious an issue to left to the public officials alone. So there has been a war of attrition between civil society and government officials for the last 10 years. Last 10 years are the period when civil society actually turned its focus to the budget analysis and budget work. Unfortunately, still there are not many civil society groups in Pakistan who focuses on budget and budget analysis like things. So when it comes to the budget making process in Pakistan, Pakistan is a federation. Someone asked me that is Pakistan a republic? I said that it was a republic when I left Islamabad on Monday evening, but I'm not sure what it will be when I land on Saturday. Because as I speak to you, ladies and gentlemen, the news are very depressing from Pakistan, especially civil society space to work is shrinking day by day, and there was news a couple of days back that 21 international NGOs have been asked to shut down their business within the 60 days and go out of the country. And right today, 10 minutes before this session was started, I got a news that even Open Society Foundation has also been asked to shut down their business in Pakistan. So news are not very happy, and it's very depressing news. So budget in Pakistan is made in total secrecy. We are a federation with 3 tiers of government: federal government, provincial government, we have 4 provinces, and then the district government. We, on average, have 30 districts in each province. And like many of the countries, major taxes are being collected by the federal government, and then it comes to the provincial government through an instrument called National Finance Commission, and then from the provinces it comes to the district through an instrument called Provincial Finance Commission. So it's a total secret. No one knows that at what stage the budget is, and inclusion is totally denied at all 3 levels. I remember that if any one of you who knows how the budget making process works, you can appreciate that the whole budget making process starts well before the financial year starts. For example, in Pakistan, the financial year starts in July. So the budget making process starts in like September, 9 months before the actual financial year starts. What they do at federal level is that they had a pre-budget session, pre-budget seminar organized by the government of Pakistan in May. And May is a time where the budget has already been finalized. So there is no fun of having involving civil society or involving Chamber of Commerce in budget negotiation in May. And it's like a formality that our government has been fulfilling for the last few years. At district level even, there is no consultation. Although the rules are very clear that district government has to take civil society organization, women groups, Chamber of Commerce, citizens on board while deciding and while preparing the district budget, but still we don't have any initiative from the district government to do that. And then the allocations are very non-transparent. For example, in Punjab, a province which is the largest province in Pakistan, it is the same province from where I belong. If you see the development budget document, almost 50% is non-transparent. When I say non-transparent, what does it mean? Block allocations. Road to farm to market roads, 30 billion rupees, for example. It's not clear that where it will be implemented, at which district the road will be built, not clear. And when I was very surprised to learn yesterday only from my Philippine colleagues that in Philippines there is a rule that if a project is not included in the initial budget document, it cannot be commissioned during the year. In Pakistan, it is not the case. In Pakistan, you get your budget passed during the month of June, for example. But during the implementation year, at any point, you can dream of, you can think of any new project, and you can just start. And I know you are laughing, but it's very normal for us. It's very normal for us. Because these are the projects that our financial manager did not think of at the start of the year. One good morning, our political leadership, our government officials get up and they say that this metro is very important for the people. And then they can start, they can withdraw funds, they can stop funds from any of the project, and they can start the new project. And the only thing they need is that by the end of the year, when they are dealing with the next year budget, they also bring in the assembly a document which is called supplementary budget, and they get it passed within a couple of hours. And the beauty of the supplementary budget is that it doesn't make headlines. It doesn't make headlines in the newspaper. So what the fun to include these controversial projects in the beginning of the financial year and be in the eyes of media and civil society, and to avoid that criticism, don't include all these projects initially in original budget list, original budget book, and then you can always start these projects. And civil society and citizens don't have any information, don't have any calendar that when the contracting process will start and when the project will be commissioned. There's no systematic arrangement that when a particular project will be starting on ground, so that citizen can monitor and see these things. Next slide. So there are so many hurdles, there are so many challenges of citizen engagement. Some of them I have already discussed. One problem is that we have a very weak right information regime. And in the countries like Pakistan, where you are doing the budget work, you have to have a very strong right to information regime so that you can get the information from the public department regarding budget figures, regarding expenditure figures, things like that. But we have a very weak implementation of the right to information. We have some very good laws, legislation is very good, but the implementation is very weak. And finally, there's a great disconnect between the citizen and the government. I wanted to discuss it in detail, but I think that I'm getting out of the time, so I will keep that I will like to discuss that in question and answer session also. So at the time being, it's
how can we work better with government? How do we not only influence them, but make the projects that we have designed in our hearts and in our minds as something that's participatory become their own? And that is what has happened because over the past 4 years, CPA, as to be fondly call it, has now been adopted and implemented in Nepal. The Commission on Audit has been going around and talking about what CPA is and influencing other supreme audit institutions to implement CPA on their own, adopt it based on their own country context. And at the same time, they have been working very closely with INTUSAI. This is the International Association of Supreme Audit Institutions, where they have been actually part of a team leading how else they could better implement and scale up CPA across supreme audit institutions. So I'm aware that some of you have sat down there. I see familiar faces, but I think I want to start with one sentence I said 4 years ago. I said something about when two opposable forces, opposable, not opposing, so that's your pointer finger and your thumb. When these two work together, something magical happens. And that's how I see CPA in terms of building trust in government. So when we talk about CPA, it is not financial audit, it is a little bit of compliance audit, but it is more on value for money audit. So we look at the efficiency, effectiveness, and economy of government projects. When we link it to contracting, we look at contracts, not only whether a contract or a government project has been implemented right on time, but whether the contract responds or addresses the objective, why it was built or why it was designed or why it was procured in the first place. And when we look at contracts under CPA, we look at contracts that benefit people, a lot of people. We look at the magnitude. We look how the contracts affect the larger population of citizens, which is why under CPA, most of the projects that we have looked at are focused on health, are focused on infrastructure, are focused on disaster risk reduction and management. So to be a little bit more specific, when we started CPA in 2012, the first thing that we looked at was the flood control system of 3 cities in Metro Manila. We wanted to know whether or not the flood control system was actually really mitigating flood. And during that time, what we found out was that there were a lot of problems in the contracting process. It was not built according to technical specifications. It has ballooned to billions. And then at the same time, the most important thing when you have a flood control system is the communication system. And apparently, there were no radios. So people manning each tower had to use their own resources. They had to use their own cell phones. So all of those things were actually identified and included as part of the audit report that the Commissioner on Audit submitted to the Department of Public Works and Highways. The very concrete result that we got there, immediate concrete result, was that when the then Minister of Public Works and Highways sat down together with both civil society and the Commission on Audit, he immediately ordered the procurement of handheld radios. It was something very concrete, something very positive for us at that moment. And then we went on to look at the conditional cash transfers. More closely, we looked at whether or not health centers were able to provide the services they were supposed to provide to pregnant women. We used and introduced social accountability tools. At that time, it was the community scorecard. It was kind of funny because one thing that we realized when we were speaking with the beneficiaries and the service providers was that beneficiaries actually didn't know what was due them. So they rated the barangay or the village health center highly, but then the service providers, the doctors, the nurses, rated themselves low because they knew the standards. So what happened at the time was eventually they decided that, okay, we're gonna look at more concrete things. What are the action points that we were gonna do? So over time, a year after, what we heard or what we learned was that medicines were now being procured. There's less, how do I say this? More medicines that are essentially available are there. Paracetamol, for instance. Doctors and nurses were starting to report on time, which was very good. And then there were more people who felt that they were being heard. I think when we talk about CPA, it's really in terms of how people, once they become part of the audit team, get to know the systems and processes of how government works. Not only the audit process, but they get to understand how is it that government works. And at the same time, government now learns how civil society works. Initially, there was a lot of mistrust. They actually didn't believe that CSOs had doctorate degrees. They actually wanted to translate into our local language, into Tagalog, very simple terms. But that was then. And right now, what we know is that they have always been saying that, citizens and the Commission on Audit should now always work together, because together we are stronger. Thank you.
This business of open government is actually not just promoting open and transparent budget, conducting participatory audit, fair and clean election, for example, or open contracting. It's actually a lot more. So I would like to draw again what we discussed in the panel this morning. Mukalani said that there is a shrinking civic space, which is serious, and it's not just happening in one or two countries, but in many countries, including Indonesia. If you talk about Egypt, you talk about China, you talk about Turkey. Basically, there is a tendency of a shrinking civil society space. And then Minister Bambang talked about increasing inequality, which is a serious threat, to the political and social stability. In Indonesia introduced decentralization policy in 1999, so it's more than 15 years ago. And with the intention, that decision making in terms of policy and budgeting will be closer to the people, because it would be decided by people in the local areas. But during that 15 years, actually, inequality in Indonesia increased significantly from 0.3 in the Gini coefficient index to 0.4 something. It has decreased slightly, but not much. And why I'm talking this not just to draw this session, with a more general session that went on this morning, but there is a pattern that all of us that need to pay attention to. There is decreasing civic space, integrity, increasing inequality, decreasing trust, but also at the same time it's connected to the rising populism, radicalism, and also nationalism. Nationalism is not just nationalism, within the developing countries, but we're not talking about nationalism in Western Europe, for example, in the UK, in America, the rise of Trump. So it's all actually related to this open government issues. So it's not, Pak Arif, when you do your job, it's not just to make a clean and fair election, but it's all related to the how then policy and budget get decided, and whether then budget can really improve the life of the poor and marginalized people. And then it's all related to our effort to prevent radicalism, for example, to fight this increasing nationalism. So I'm in line with what Phil said earlier. That we need to take a wider view regarding this open government, open budget, clean election, integrity, and stuff. So I'm not going to talk that much longer, but Andy asked me to kind of summarize regarding what was discussed about this. So the way I'm going to do it is that I made a list of what kind of government actually that we would like to see, to be able to fight the rise of inequality, shrinking civil society space, the plunging of integrity. So I made a list from all that we've been discussed, that we want a transparent government for sure, accountable government, open contracting, transparent access to data regarding election, regarding rules, responsive government, so that the budget can really address the need of the poor and marginalized. That the government has to be participatory, and also that the government has high integrity, no corruption and stuff. Now, what's the problem? The problem is that as of now, from all of the list of this, the government that we would like to see, what we see so far is just some islands, islands of integrity. It's like Bojonegoro. Oh, come on, Indonesia has more than 400 districts and cities, but for open contracting we only have Bojonegoro. So in the Philippines, for example, so it's not those good things, that would be able to decrease inequality, to prevent radicalism, to promote the welfare of the people, for openness. It's not only happening here and there. So it's being piloted, it's being pursued. We rely on champions, and champions, as all we know, there are not that many champions, not everybody can be champions. So that my point is that we already have a list actually. We know what kind of government that we would like to see, but it's our joint effort together that we have to work together with the government. We cannot stay outside of the government and saying that you have to be like this, but we need to work together, and OGP is one vehicle to do that. So that's like the kind of summary that I can do for this session.
Thanks so much.